So, in the other session, we have discussed about the challenges of fashion business and apparel merchandising. So, when we discuss the challenges of fashion business and apparel merchandising, there were challenges like product obsolescence, and there are challenges like short life cycles, and there are challenges like the long lead times. So, how do we survive? How do the business people survive in such a situation? So, what are the tactics to overcome these challenges? How do the business people hedge the risk involved in this fashion business? So, we have discussed that through one is by incorporating fashion forecasting in design and development of the merchandise. Second one is through planning. So, using these tools, the business people try to hedge the risk in the fashion business, particularly the product obsolescence risk. So, that way, fashion forecasting plays a major role in the enabling the fashion business successfully. So, fashion forecasting is a huge research process. So, fashion forecasting involves a huge research process, and there are a lot of significance to the fashion forecasting in the sense that it has a commercial value. So, fashion forecasting, by incorporating the fashion forecasting in design development of the products, so the product obsolescence is reduced and acceptability of products is increased. So, that is an effective way of dealing with product obsolescence, short life cycles, and the long lead times. So, that is the importance of fashion forecasting. So, that in this session we will try to look at what is a fashion forecasting and its impact. So, this session will be fashion forecasting. So, coming to fashion forecasting, what is fashion forecasting? So, what do you mean? What do we mean by fashion forecasting? So, fashion forecasting is nothing but prediction of colors, style of apparel, and accessories which are new directions in fashion that the majority of people would like to buy at a given time and place. So, to put it simply, fashion forecasting is predicting the fashions, and this prediction is done in terms of fashion design elements. So, fashion forecasting is prediction of the fashions. Prediction of fashions. So, this prediction of fashions is done in terms of fashion design elements. Fashion design elements. So, what are they? What are the fashion design elements? So, one is, you can say, style and silhouette. Style and silhouette. You can say color. Color is again another element. Then fabrics. Then accessories. Then accessories. That means fashion forecasting is done in terms of fashion design elements, which are style and silhouette, color, and fabrics and accessories. And fashion forecasting is always done in terms of for a given period. That means for a given season, for a given season and given year. So, season and year. So a fashion forecasting is specific to a particular year and a particular season. That means you have a fashion forecasting, say for the year spring summer 2016. Similarly, we also have a fashion forecasting available for the winter autumn 2016. So fashion forecasting is always for a specific season and specific year, and it is also done in category wise. It is also done, fashion forecast is category. So that means we have fashion forecasting for men's category, and we have for women's category, and we have for kids wear, so on and so forth. So there is a separate forecast made for men's wear, separately for women's wear, and separately for kids wear. So coming back, so that means fashion forecasting is prediction of fashions in terms of the fashion design elements for a specific season of specific year and for a specific category. So this is how the fashion is predicted. So it is anticipating the customer wants and demands by designers, merchandisers and buyers. Why do we need fashion forecast? So what is the necessary to forecast the fashions? So as we discussed, yes, it is to basically hedge the risk. Fashion, it is the style or styles most popular at the time. What is fashion? Fashion is all about being in vogue, being in popular. So whatever is popular, whatever is in vogue is in fashion. And the term popularity or vogueness implies 4 components. That is a particular style, acceptance, taste and change. So here the key word is acceptance. So for a fashion to be a fashion, it is acceptance which is important. So acceptance is a key word here. What is accepted by majority is a fashion. We have already discussed that fashion is nothing but what is accepted by majority is a fashion. So what is in vogue is a fashion. So for that and for to face the challenges involved in the business, we need to forecast the fashions. And whatever 4 components we discussed, fashion can also be a cyclic at times. That means fashions do come back. So it is important to know when do they come back, when are they likely to come back, in what direction the fashions are moving. So it is all required. It is impossible to ask consumer what they will want to wear in a year or 2 in advance. They would not know themselves. So we have to do fashion forecasting by doing an appropriate research. You cannot directly ask consumers what they would like to wear, what colors they are looking at, what fabrics they are looking at, what kind of styles and silhouettes they want to wear in a year or 2. So that is not possible because the customers or consumers themselves have no clue to what that they are going to wear. So it is not simply not possible that way. So we need to do a research process to forecast. So why do we need to forecast? Because designers, merchandisers and retailers have to work ahead of the season. So as we discussed, in order to hedge the risk of product obsolescence, so we need to know this can be done. A designer, a retail business person, a merchandiser can design anything and bring it to the market. But customers may accept it or may not accept it. What they accept would become fashions. what they reject becomes obsolete. So there is a risk. Whatever is produced and brought to the store may ultimately be accepted or rejected. If it is rejected, it is unsold and the money is tied in the form of a stock. So that is called product obsolescence. So how do we avoid this kind of a product obsolescence risk? So the best way to do is to predict what would be the fashions in terms of colors, in terms of fabrics, in terms of silhouettes. If you can predict, if you can anticipate, and if the designers and merchandisers develop their merchandise in tune with the predicted fashions, then the acceptability of fashions, the acceptability of the products, acceptability of collections that they have designed, developed and brought to the store would increase, and the risk in the business would decrease. For that reason, we need to forecast. There is a requirement for being forecasting the. So because designers, merchandisers and retailers have to work ahead of the season, so minimum 2 seasons at the least, so as to manufacture stocks in time for the season, and to keep the business going they have to learn to anticipate customer wants and needs. So since the business needs time, the fashion business needs time to prepare itself for the predicted fashions. So that is the reason they want to work ahead and they want to forecast. So the maximum time it is taken, the maximum time that industry may take to prepare itself for the predicted fashions, it can be up to 2 years. That means starting with the materials, starting from fibers to fabrics to yarns, fabrics, garment manufacturing and retailing. So the preparation time required for industry can extend at a maximum level to 2 years. So that is the reason why the fashion forecasting is done at least 2 years in advance. At least 2 years in advance. So that is the reason, that is a necessity why we need to forecast ahead of the time. Next is the change being a big factor for forecasting. That means factors causing the fashion to change. So why the fashions are always changing, and change is the constant factor with respect to the fashion. So why this changes? One is because of the season. So season can initiate a change, because suppose there are fashions which are well accepted by the consumers, they are being sold, they are doing very well, but there is a seasonal change. Because of the seasonal change, the styles, the collection, the clothing that the people are currently using is not suitable for the next upcoming season. Suppose there is a change from a spring to winter. So then the clothing, we need a warm clothing in the winter. So there has to be a change. That means seasonal change may necessitate a change in the fashions, a change in the clothing that is required. So similarly, occasion. There can be special occasions, Valentine's Day, there can be marriage occasions, marriage seasons. So occasions also can influence the change of fashions. Similarly, social influences, celebrity influences, influence of certain social events, films, etc., theatre, they also can bring in changes in the fashion movement. And so then the performance and work wear, the requirements of a office going people and requirements of performing people, sports people, they need a different kind of clothing. They need the clothing that suits their performance. So there is again all these are the requirements for change. Next. due to the constant requirements and changes, different categories have emerged in the market. So because of all these requirements, so there are new categories that have emerged in the market. So like we have ethnic wear. Ethnic wear is again a category where people wear the traditional ethnic clothing. Then we have sports wear. The sports people who are active in sports, so they need a certain clothing which will enable them to perform better in their activity. So they need a special clothing that is called the sports wear. Then we have casual wear. Casual wear is as against work wear or formal wear. Casual wear enables the people to relax, the people to be casual, the people to go on vacations, the people to be on in a relaxing mood. So casual wear again has increased its importance due to increased leisureness, increased weekend, so increased paid holidays, etc. So and casual wear has more scope for change and variety vis-a-vis formal wear. The next thing is formal wear. Formal wear is basically to work. The clothing that people wear for work is the formal wear. So it is always a formality. So it is not that you can easily relax like a casual wear. Formal wear allows you to be formal, to be in a different set working mode. So then we have what is known as a party wear. So as the people are getting into a party mode, weekend parties and etc. So there is a requirement that you wear a suitable clothing which will enable you to be a attraction in the parties, wear nice and looking good looking and attractive clothing, so colorful clothing, flashy clothing, etc. So that is giving a scope for a particular type of wear called party wear. So it is also fast has emerged as a major category as the things go on. So how do we do fashion forecasting? What it entails to the fashion forecasting? Fashion forecasting includes following activities. So fashion forecasting includes following activities. So let us see what are the things that we have to do in order to do the fashion forecasting. So fashion forecasting involves the following. One is the studying market conditions. Study of market conditions. Study of market conditions. So study of market conditions means how the consumer's buying behavior is influenced by society, economics, technology and environment. So particularly how the changes are happening in the marketplace, what kind of products are coming in, what kind of products are being showcased, and how consumers are buying that, and how the consumer behavior is getting influenced. There can be a lot of sociological factors which are influencing the consumer behavior, consumer buying pattern, and there can also be a cultural factors which would again influence the buying pattern and buying behavior of consumers, and there can also be a psychological factors which would again influence the consumer buying pattern. Of course, there are again the factors like economics, how the economy is doing, technological factors have a major influence, and the overall environment, business environment that we look at. So that is studying all these market conditions is very essential to understand the movement of fashion, to understand the fashion directions, to understand the fashion in its entirety. Then is to study the consumer behavior. Consumer behavior. Consumer behavior. So again, we have been discussing that consumer behavior has psychological dimensions, sociological influences, and there is a role played by the family members in the buying pattern of the consumers, population characteristics, that is the demographics, personal characteristics, and patronage motives. So consumer behavior is influenced by a variety of factors. So they are basically related to the psychology, how the psychological situation is changing. They are basically influenced by the sociological factors. So the sociological factors have their own role, and there is the influence of friends and family members. So the consumer buying pattern is influenced by friends and family members. It is definitely influenced more by the demographics. So demographics are the population characteristics like age, like education, like income levels, etc. And of course, there are the influence of lifestyles of the customers. So what kind of lifestyles the customers are leading, and how these lifestyles are changing, how the lifestyles are changing. So that is also important to know how the lifestyles are changing and how the change of lifestyles is affecting the buying behavior and buying pattern of the consumers. So, and what is the influence of all this on fashion movements and fashion directions, fashion change directions. So then we can also look at feedback from customers. Feedback from customers. Taking a feedback from customers about fashion movements. So what are currently in fashions? What are expected to be in fashion? What are going out of fashion? So what is the perception of consumers? What is the feedback of consumers on the same? That can be a very good contributor to the data and information required for fashion forecasting. So that is a thing. And then we have another thing is fast data analysis. Fast data analysis. The previous data, previous year, what is contributed to the previous forecasts. So the previous data is all analyzing that data, it will be very, very useful. So how the previous data has been collected, how it was analyzed, how that has led to the predictions, and how the predictions have come true. So how that extrapolation was done. So how that would help for the current extrapolation of the fashions or current predictions of the fashions. So fast data analysis is always an important part of fashion forecasting research process. So that has to be taken seriously. The another thing is observing the street fashion, what celebrities are wearing. So the next important factor could be street fashions. Street fashion and celebrities. Street fashion and celebrities. So we need to look at the street fashions, what the people on the streets are wearing, what these the regular streets among people on the streets, what they are wearing, What do you see the trends among them? Do you see some interesting trends, some new things, some very bold expressions in them? Then similarly, what are celebrities wearing? What our celebrities are giving directions? So this is also very very important observation, because these things will ultimately influence your the fashion that are going to come into existence at a later time. And then keeping up with the current events, media, art, and mood of the public. So currently, what is happening? So the current scenario is again important. Study of current scenario. Current scenario. So currently, what is happening with respect to the fashion? Currently, what is happening with respect to the fashion movements? It is always again very very important to study. See, the current scenario is needs to be studied because it is an indication of future to come. The current fashions, the current fashion movements are an indication of the future fashion scenario. So it is very very important that you study the current fashions, current scenario of fashions and trends, and what are events major which will influence the fashion, and those events and mood of the public you have to study. Then we can also, the other thing is surveying the fashion publications, catalogs, magazines, and websites. So that means you need to look at what is being written in the fashion magazines, in the fashion journals. So basically, fashion literature is into two categories: fashion journals and magazines. So fashion magazines and journals. Fashion journals and magazines. Fashion journals are the publications meant for the people in working in the industry. That means these are read by the executives, the staff, the designers, merchandisers who are working in the industry. So whereas the magazines are meant for general public. So fashion magazines are meant for general people, general public. So but avidly referred by even the industry people, because they want to know what these magazines are writing about fashion and fashion movements and fashion related information. So that is why it is always important that you keep track of what is being written in fashion publications, which may be include the magazines and journals, and now fashion websites. We also have websites which are writing about fashion, which are tracking the fashion, which are giving information about the fashions. So it is very very essential. Then evaluating the popular designer collections. So look at what designers are designing, what is their themes, what are the new things, new trends among designer developments. So look at designer collections, popular designer collections. Look at them. Collections. So that is this will give a light on again how the fashions are changing, what new things are coming up, what is what is in the mind of the popular designers. So how all these would lead to future fashions, how all these would lead to the fashion scenario that is going to emerge in the next 2-3 years time. So in forecasting, knowing the consumer and the target market is also vital. So basically human psyche is universal, and there can be certain universality to the predicted fashions, but at the same time it has to be adapted to the customer base of the retail store, the target market of retail store. So you need to adopt the predicted fashions to the local market preferences, local market tastes. So ultimately what is again important is you need to look for target market tastes and preferences and preferences. So we need to look at that. So we cannot go blind on that. So ultimately whatever is predicted fashions, whatever is published in the fashion predicting journals, you have to adopt it to the local requirements. You have to adapt it to the requirements of the store customers' needs and wants and preferences. That is very, very important as well as essential. So because the customers are different customers are different. So they can vary in the demographic details. That means in terms of the demographics of age, demographics of education, demographics of income levels, so on and so forth. Similarly, they can vary in their lifestyles. Different people are having different type of lifestyles, so that can also be a change. And then they can also vary in their brand preferences. Different people prefer different brands. So the brand preferences are also different with respect to the different people. So that is why all customers you cannot put in the same bracket. All customers you cannot put it in the same boat. So they are different. You have to identify the differences. So you have to see what is that store customers and what are their requirements, what are their preferences, and what are their needs and wants. So then comes another important thing is market research, which would also help the fashion forecasting. So market research is very much required if you are in the business of predicting the fashions. If you are in the business of predicting the fashions. Market research. So what is market research? It is to know the target market. Market research is required. So it is basically to gain more knowledge about the target market. So you want to know more knowledge about the target market. That is what is market research. So manufacturers and retailers must constantly research their target market to learn buying habits and preferences. So you need to constantly know the market. So you need to learn about the market. So to learn about target market. Market research is to learn about the target market. You need to know about the target market. So the retailers must constantly research to learn their buying habits and preferences. So this is to learn their buying habits and preferences So in order to know the buying habits and preferences of the target audience, you need to do a market research. It consists of following activities. A market research consists of following activities. So what are the activities in the market research? What are the activities in the market research? What do we do? So the first and foremost thing obviously would be consumer research. So the first is consumer research. So obviously consumer research refers to the research about consumers. Who are the consumers? What they are consuming? how they are consuming, frequency of consumption, and what are the substitutes they may be using, what are the their likes, what brands they are preferring. So all that comes under the consumer research. The consumer research. Consumer research is very very vital in the aspect of the market research. Consumer research is a very vital aspect of the market research. So we need to know much about consumer research, focus on consumer research. So then the other part of the market research could be shopping. The other thing is shopping. So the information about shopping. So who are shopping and how they are shopping, and what is the frequency of shopping, how much they are buying. So what is their buying budgets, how much they are spending in the shopping. So what are the activities that facilitate the shopping, what foot of shopping. So we have to know how the shopping activity is happening, how the customers are doing the shopping, and what is the shopping habits, shopping frequencies, etc. So that is again a very very important contributor to market research. The next thing is sales records. Next thing is sales records. Sales records. Sales records is again a very very important information. So you rope in the retailers to get information about the sales, how much they are selling, when they are selling, when their sales are reaching peak, when their sales are lean, and what is the sales pattern in the week, during weekdays and during the weekends. So what are their conversion rates, what is their average transaction value, that means what is the average transaction value. So these are very very, and what are the conversion rates. Conversion rates means out of 100 people visiting the store, how many are actually purchasing, and out of those people purchasing, what is the average value of each transaction. So that is, this information is very very crucial. So this indicates so how the retail business is happening, how the sales are happening, and what is the sales volume, and what are the transaction values, and all this throws a very important information about the market. And finally we have trend analysis. The next thing is trend analysis. Trend analysis is about what trends are getting popular, what trends are continuing to be popular, what trends are going out of popularity, and what new trends can be spotted. What, so this is again a very very important, particularly in view of the fashion forecasting. So trend analysis is again part of market research. So here, particularly with respect to the fashion scenario, particularly with respect to the trends which are gaining popularity, trends which are continuing to be in popularity, continuing to be in the peak stage, and trends which are declining. So this kind of information is very much useful part of market research. Yeah. So look at more detailed way in consumer research. Manufacturers and retailers may ask for consumers about their buying preferences. Consumer reactions are compiled and tabulated to find preferences for certain garments, or accessories, or colors, or sizes. This information can be used to create new products to fit specific consumer tastes. So consumer research involves maybe developing a kind of a qualitative or can also be a quantitative research tools. So quantitative may involve the questionnaire development or a research instrument development. So then the consumers are asked about their buying preference irrespective of the research tool used. They will be asked about their buying preferences, and consumer reactions are compiled and tabulated. Consumer reactions are compiled and tabulated to find preferences for certain garments, or accessories or even colors and sizes. So the information, the research findings can be used to create in the creation of new products, new merchandise, so that it will suit the requirements of the customer or consumer tastes. And this consumer research can be done in various ways. Buyers and sales associates may talk with customers in the store or with the store staff. That means the consumer research can also be done by the sales people or sales associates in the store, who will be talking regularly with the customers. So they can talk to the customers about their preferences and tastes and get the required data, and that may be supplied for the analysis. Similarly, manufacturers or retailers may hire market research companies. Manufacturers or retailers may hire market research companies for surveys by phone or mail, to make inquiries, to hold consumer focus group meetings. So that means here the most of the research is done by focused group discussions, FGD, focused group discussions, which are held. So they will hire, the manufacturers and retailers would hire market research companies, and these research companies do surveys by phone or mail, or they may also even hold focus group discussions with selected group of consumers. Consumer focus groups are meetings of target customers, FGD, focus group discussions. They are the meetings of a target customers, usually selected by a market research firm. So usually selected by a market research firm to meet with manufacturers and retailers. These groups discuss pros and cons of merchandise and other aspects of shopping satisfaction. So this selected group of customers from the target market, they will be having discussions with the involving even the merchandisers and others. So this kind of discussions of focused group discussions would lead to some useful clues, useful information about the tastes and preferences and wants and needs of the target market segment. So this will give a very valuable information for the merchandisers and for the retailers. So this kind of a consumer research would be very useful. Then it also may involve forming loyalty club. So many of the retailers nowadays, they have a loyalty club programs. So getting feedback through mails from customers. So through these loyalty program, they have the customer base, they maintain contact with the customers, and they can get feedback through mails from the customers, and that would be again, it would be a very valuable information, and that can contribute to the consumer research. So loyalty programs and loyalty clubs can also play a useful role in the consumer research process. And another thing could be from the dealers and or the retailers selling those products. So a very useful information can be obtained from the dealers and retailers of the products, because these dealers and retailers are regularly in touch with the end consumers and the supply chain and the distribution network. So the word of mouth feedback and the feedback taken from the end consumers can be assessed, can be accessed by the product marketeers, and that information can give a useful data and useful ideas and clues about customer preferences and tastes. So again, this can also be a good source for consumer research. Then analyzing the customer complaints and garments returned. So again, another important source for consumer research could be complaints received from the customers. So what are the various complaints received from the customers, received from the consumers to the retailers, and what is the nature of their complaint, particularly with respect to the product, product performance, product look, and product features. So all this information can be a very valuable data and information regarding consumer research. So basically, this again gives important data with the analysis of customer complaints. It can be a very good resource for consumer research. So one should keep an eye on that. The next thing is, in our next part of the market research is shopping. Next part of the consumer market research is shopping. So shopping is, it is basically what is that you study in shopping. To study what consumer want and need, and designer and merchandiser shop in retail stores to see what merchandise is selling best. So that means you try to see how the customers are shopping, what they are buying. So what is selling good, what is not selling. So how the consumers are behaving while shopping. So how the consumers are taking decisions to buy or not to buy. What are the selection factors they are employing for taking decision of buying or passing it by. So all that information can be obtained by doing a study of shopping. Designers and merchandisers compare styling, price, fit, quality of lines that compete with their own range. That means designers and merchandisers can also visit the stores of competitors, stores of peer stores, and in case of customers, they can go and browse the merchandise, analyze the price points, analyze the styling, analyze the quality of the lines, and compare that with their own product range. Compare quality of their products with their own products. Compare the quality offered by the competitors, so with the quality offered by their products. Compare the price ranges of the competitors with their own price ranges. So this will give again a very valuable information about market. It also helps in trend spotting. So when these people are going around in the shopping research, so it helps trend spotting. So they can spot some trends that are appearing in the other stores that probably they have missed out or not available in their stores, but other stores are able to catch and they are able to put it for sale in their stores. So this would be a very good opportunity for trend spotting by merchandisers and buyers and designers when they are doing this shopping research. The another aspect is sales records, past data analysis. Sales records, that means past data analysis. Every manufacturer and retailer researches its own sales records. The sales records of previous years, the sales records of previous seasons are an important source of information and data. Analyzing that information, analyzing that data would give to a very interesting, very useful and very relevant findings, and that can be of great application. So rising sales statistics show what fashion trends are developing. Declining sales show what styles have passes their peak. That means when you analyze these sales, you understand that If the sales of certain items are picking up and growing fast, that means they are becoming trends. They are gaining popularity. They are reaching their maturity. If the sales of certain products, certain passions are continuing to be at a high level for a considerable length of time, that means they are continuing at the peak of their fashion, peak of their popularity, peak of their vogueness. And similarly, when you analyze that the sales of certain products, certain the merchandise is declining fast. So that means the fashion, those fashions are going out of fashion. Those fashions are declining. So that is, these inferences again give a valuable idea of the movement of fashions. So that is again a very relevant research. Overall, weak sales show that a style is not meeting consumer needs for fashion, quantity or fit. By careful monitoring sales record, retail can see the trends. That means when they spot that a particular item is selling very weak, it is very weak in the sales. So it means that it has failed to catch the imagination of the customers. It has failed to become a trend. It has failed to become vogue. So for whatever reasons, the reason can be for fashion or for fit or anything. So the product has become kind of obsolete. So that would put immediately, you can identify that yes, this has become obsolete, then a suitable action can be taken on that. So that is why this sales records and analysis of sales is very pertinent and very relevant. Similarly, each style before going in production is allocated a style number for easy tracking. So generally all the styles are given certain numbers so that that style can be tracked using that number. So this becomes important from the production stage to inventory to sales. That number is used to track that product, to track that SKU. So tracking the sell through of each style, number category wise based on the shelf life. So once that number is given, tracking becomes easy, tracking becomes more appropriate. So you track the sell through of each style number and in a category based on shelf life. So that would involve how much time it is in the shelf and how much is getting sold, how fast it is getting sold, all that information can be obtained. Collecting the best and the worst performers. So then you can identify by keeping this tracking on, you can identify what is the best performers and what are the worst performers and what are the average performers. So identifying them becomes very easy. You can track and immediately spot the best performers and worst performers. And then once you identify them, then try to analyze the reasons for the best performance. Try to identify the reasons for the best performance. Similarly, try to identify the reasons for worst performance. So this kind of analysis is very relevant to understand what is the reason, what are the causes for success and what are the reasons for failure. So that would help in the future development of merchandise, future merchandise and product developments. Then collecting similar data for colors to arrive at the color palette for the season. So you can also look at sales data color wise. So how colors are selling. So each color keep track how it is selling. So there are colors which are picking up the sales. They have been selling well for the last few seasons, and there are colors which have gone out of the favor for the target segment of the store. They are not selling well anymore. So color wise tracking of sales is again a very important source of information. So that would has a tremendous impact. It would show a tremendous information, and it would give a very important the clues about future predictions about the colors. So color tracking the color sales, tracking the sales of product color wise is a very good research, and it is very important, given that when you are saying that it is the color which sells. Color is an important selection factor for a customer to take a decision to buy or not to buy. When that is the case, it makes all the more sense, all the more important. It makes very good sense to make a track of sales track of each color and make some analysis and draw some inferences which can be used for future development of product and merchandise. Then observing the trends. The fourth point, which is trend analysis in the market research. So trend analysis is identifying the product category and its competitors. So what are the product categories that is being sold, and what are its competitors? What is their most sought after product or style? So what are the styles and products which are in major demand, which are getting more popular, which are getting more trendy? So that is kind of analysis is again a very important for the fashion forecasting part. Observing the styles, colors and trends widely used. That means an observation of what colors are selling better, what colors are not selling well, what colors are not being liked, what colors are being preferred, and similarly, what are the styles that are currently in vogue, what are the styles that are continuing to be in vogue, and what are the styles that are declining. So this kind of information can be very useful. The inferences drawn from this type of a study can be a valuable input for fashion forecast research process. That means observing the styles, observing the colors and how they are coming in popularity or going out of popularity, and spotting them and recording them could be very useful for the market research. And then try to identify various trends that are coming up or various trends that are getting popular, identify their specialty, identify how they are special. Then traveling for international fairs and trade shows. So the designers and merchandisers need to travel to international fairs and trade shows because they showcase what is being designed by the famous designers of the world, what is being designed and developed, the products being designed and developed by the famous manufacturers of the world, and what is being showcased by the marketers of well-known brands, well-known labels. So that is again throws very good information. So you have to travel. That means the designers and merchandisers need to travel to international fairs. That would give you a fairly good idea of what is happening at a global level. So instead of traveling to different markets in the world, it would be more sensible and more meaningful to travel to international fairs where different people from various places across the world would come and participate, and that way the information which is obtained there has a lot of value and more cost effective. Similarly, the trade shows. So it is a must that the merchandisers and designers visit these trade shows. Then visiting the retail outlets. So they can also visit retail outlets whenever they are going to the various other places in the world, in the country, and wherever they are going for fairs and trade shows. They can also visit the retail outlets in that location, retail outlets in their place, and what they are showcasing, what they are selling, and what are the trends among them, what are the new things that are coming up in the what they have showcased in their retail spaces. So that is again a very good information to be considered. So then finally you compile all the data received from all these sources and analyze. So then compile all the styles that you have observed and then analyze. So this compilation and analysis is again a very important part of this research. Just compiling or just going and seeing, just going and noting will not make any sense unless you compile them and you analyze them for a meaningful inferences. So continuing with the trend analysis, fashion trend. What is fashion trend? We have discussed again in other sessions also that fashion trend is nothing but a fashion direction. Fashion trend is nothing but fashion direction. It is the direction in which the fashions are changing. It is the direction in which the fashions are changing. These will give the styling ideas that major collections have in common. They indicate the direction in which fashion is moving. They indicate the direction in which fashion is moving. Trend may appear in a new or unique fabrication. Trend may appear in a new or a unique fabrication. They may appear in a new silhouette or in other design elements, that means in colors or in fabrics or in accessories. So any other thing the fashion trend may appear. The new direction may appear, a new thing may appear. So it appears in multiple collections. New trend appears in small doses until it spreads to other collections. This is what is to be understood very clearly. That means when a trend starts, it starts in a small scale. So it will get into a fashion once the people start accepting it. Once the customers and people start accepting it as a fashion, as acceptance grows, its volume also grows. So that means whenever the trend is starting, initially it is small in scale. As it becomes vogue, as it gains vogueness, as it gains popularity, so the scale increases. The scale of acceptance increases, the scale of sales would increase, the scale of presence, the scale of appearance in the market, everything would be increasing in leaps and bounds. So when it is appearing in small doses, but slowly it will increase. Designers for mainstream manufacturers analyze the collections to understand the. Next comes trend for target market. So diverse consumer age segments and lifestyle create many separate market niches, each with its own trends. With today's segmented market, a trend may be confined to a single market niche, and the designer and merchandiser should be able to decide which trend is best suited for their consumer groups. That means, so there are different segments of customers and there are trends coming up in the market. So which trends are most suited to which type of customer segment? So the designers and marketeers and merchandisers, they should be clearly be judging this. What are the trends that are suitable to a given consumer segment? So that is very important. So a particular trend may not be affecting all consumer segments. So, and if at all it is affecting more than one, at what point of time it is affecting, whether that segment is a fashion follower or a fashion leader or a fashion laggard. So depending on that, the time at which it is influencing that segment would also vary. So accordingly they have to look at that. Then fashion services and resources. So what are the various fashion services and resources available for fashion forecast research? Fashion professionals rely on information sources such as design, color and video services, newsletters, books, magazines and websites to follow fashion trends. So there are various types of resources available for doing this trend research, trend analysis. So many we have traditionally available newsletters, books and magazines, and now we also have video and services available. We have online services available. There are websites dedicated to this type of research and information. So now the getting information and data, there are a lot of resources available for the people who are involved in fashion forecasting or trend analysis. So websites, mainly there are many websites, and there are fashion magazines. So websites, they are dedicated to the fashion research, fashion information, and fashion forecasting, etc. And there are fashion magazines who always talk about the upcoming trends. They talk about customer preferences. They talk about new fashion trends, etc. That they are all these resources are a very valuable resources for the people who are interested in the trend analysis. So for fashion forecast websites, most widely used is WGSN. It is a 10-year-old website. It's more than 10 years, in fact. So WGSN is one of the very important website related to fashion forecast. So many of the people in the industry, they always keep referring to the WGSN when it comes to the fashion forecasting. So categories followed by most of the fashion forecast websites. So they're all dedicated to different types of fashion categories. So like they have menswear, women's wear, kids wear, and there can be swimwear, there can be sportswear. So there are a lot of category wise dedication of fashion forecast websites. And top brands use WGSN for a reason, or indeed several reasons. So why WGSN is most popularly used website for information related to fashion forecasting? So particularly the top brands, they are using information from WGSN, and there are reasons for that. How do fashion forecast website work? So let us look at that to understand the importance of WGSN. One is global coverage. At any given moment, WGSN researchers are all over the world gathering cultural inspiration. So that means WGSN has got a worldwide network. They have got their researchers are there every nook and corner of the world, gathering the information about anything relevant for fashion, trends. So it has got a worldwide information gathering. They are looking for inspirations, they are looking for trend spotting, etc. And they are also tracking consumer attitudes. They are also tracking consumer attitudes in different parts of the world, and monitoring. They are also monitoring retail patterns up to 4 seasons in advance. So they are also monitoring the retail patterns, patterns up to 4 seasons in advance. So that is again a very big deal, and that is what makes WGSN a very important website as far as the fashion forecasting is concerned. Then expert teamwork. Teams of analysts study the gatherings at the think tank. So that means there are teams of analysts. So these analysts would be studying whatever is gathered, whatever data, whatever information gathered by these networks which are there across the world. All that information is compiled and analyzed by the team of experts, team of analysts at their think tank meetings. Think tank gets together to analyze seasonal trend information, on color, textiles, styles, absorb real-time reports which capture the spirit of the moment. That means these think tank meetings are focused on analyzing the seasonal trend information. So they naturally that analysis would be with respect to the various fashion design elements like color, like textiles or fabrics, and styles and silhouettes. So this is based on this analysis would be based on the real-time report that they are getting from across the world. So most of the information and data that is they are gathering is compiled and analyzed on a real-time basis, and it captures the spirit of the moment at that point of time. What is the scenario of fashions? What is the scenario of fashion trends? So it is a real-time think tank analysis, and develop new ideas. Develop new ideas based on global learnings. Ensure learning across all three are shared between the category specialists. So that means the ideas based on the global learning. So whatever ideas that come out of this think tank based on the global learnings. So that would ensure a proper analysis, a proper learnings, and a proper findings which are very relevant for trend analysis as well as fashion forecasting. So each team is led by a category specialist. So in the teams, in the think tank teams, each team is led by a category specialist. Who is a category specialist? He is a proven expert in their field. So that means a category expert is a proven expert in that field, in that category. Crucially, these outstanding talents share their learnings with each other. So when these teams led by team leaders are coming together and discussing and deliberating and analyzing the information and the data received, so they share their learnings. There is a sharing of learnings happening with each other across the categories. So that intercategory learnings are shared, and that is again a greatly would enhance and enrich the thinking process and analyzing process. So their expertise is very comprehensive. Is the future. It is the future and is very comprehensive. So this kind of a sharing of the experiences, thinking, the brooding over the information gathered. So all this would enrich the thinking process, and the resultant and the consequent learnings, consequent inferences would be very useful for the business. Informed by each other, their experience of global trend spotting. So when they share information and their experience of global trend spotting, define which trends will have an impact. It will define which trends will have an impact and which ones won't. Not only on the fashion industry but on the textile manufacturing, advertising, technology, and even automotive design. So when they share this their own experiences of global trend spotting with others, so it will have a great impact. And so these learnings and these inferences would be useful not only for the fashion apparel industry but also for textile manufacturing. It is also would be useful for advertising, and it will be useful to use the technology, and it may even contribute to automotive designs also. So next is original CAD designs. Designers work with the key trends. Turning them into commercially viable colors. Textiles, silhouettes, styling, and graphics, and fine-tuning them to suit each market. So the designers work with the key trends and turning them into the commercially viable colors. So by following the key trends that are being observed, designers will be having some ideas, design concepts, and turn them ultimately into a commercially viable concepts of colors and fabric, silhouettes, and styling and graphics, and fine tuning them to suit the market. Ultimately, whatever is shortlisted, whatever is they found potentially viable for commercial converting, so they ultimately turn them to to suit each market. So they have to fine tune them. They have to fine tune them so that they are suitable for the given market. These become tools in designing next year's hottest products. These become tools in designing next year's hottest products. Last year alone, WGSN developed, in the previous years, WGSN developed more than thousands of downloadable shapes and graphics for their clients to use, all of which ensures that they get the right information in right place at right time. So WGSN that way is a very, very useful tool for the designers and merchandisers, because they also have downloadable shapes and graphics of the expected trends, and that is again giving a very, very valuable information to the designers. So this would ensure that whatever they design would be able to beat the product obsolescence risk. So thus fulfilling the fulfilling the objective of fashion forecasting, the objective of trend analysis. Confirming the forecasts. They track the chosen trends in real time. They track the chosen trends in the real time and confirming their forecasts as they materialize. That means what is forecasted, what is they have predicted is always tracked. All these websites and forecast services, they do track what is that they have predicted, and that too in a real time basis they track, and they confirm their forecasts as they materialize. To what extent they have been successful in their predictions, to what extent they have been successful in their predictions. So they have to come back on that also. That is why they keep tracking the real time, and they keep tracking and even publishing that to what extent their predictions have materialized. Role of fashion magazines, journals in forecasting. Fashion magazines and journals have a great role to play in the fashion forecasting process. As we discussed earlier, fashion journals are nothing but they are basically the publications meant for people who are working in the industry. Fashion journals are the publication meant for the people who are working in the industry, whereas fashion magazines are the publications which are meant for general public, but also avidly referred by the people who are working in the industry. That means the people who are working in the industry would also like to know what these fashion magazines are writing about and how it is going to influence the people, the consumers in their purchase decisions. So that is why they are also keen about what is that these fashion magazines are writing about. So there are following types. One is trade publications, magazines intended for people working in the industry. International consumer fashion magazines, or sometimes called fashion magazines. These are publications created for general public. These are publications created for general public. And apart from that, there can also be catalogs available which says what is available in the market, at that what are new introductions in the market. All that information may be produced. So role of fashion magazines and journals in the forecasting is very, very important. So these are Vogue. You have Vogue, which is again a fashion magazine, and there are others like the Women's Wear Diary, etc., which are basically fashion journals. Role of trade publications. So what is the role of trade publications in this? It is the form of newspapers. It can be journal or in the form of magazine, but they offer readers information on fashion trends. Developments in the textile and fashion industries and retailing. So most importantly, the trade publications are important in that they give information about what is happening in the industry, what new trends are, fashion trends. It will, on one hand, it will talk about the fashion trends, new themes, and new developments with respect to product, with respect to fashions. On the other hand, it also talks about what are the best practices in the industry, what are the best things that are happening in a particular specific industry. Maybe it is a women's wear industry, maybe it is a men's wear industry, maybe it is a kids wear. So whatever is the focus of that trade journal, so trade publication, so it will focus on that, and it will give a lot of information on these things like developments in the industry, developments in the supply chain side, developing the developments with respect to sourcing practices. So all that would be giving, and all this data, all this information would be highly useful to the people who are working in the industry, like merchandisers, designers, and the buyers. So they can all take this information and improve their functioning. So that way, their trade publications are a great help to the people who are working in the industry. The role of trade publications. Most of the trade publications specialize in a particular branch of industry. Most of the trade publications specialize in a particular branch of the industry, so that busy executives can read only those publications that provide information relevant to their market. So most specialize in a particular branch of industry. That means some may specialize in women's wear, some may specialize in kids wear. Maybe there may be a trade publication specialized in say swimwear. There can be a trade publications which are specialized in lingerie. Yes, so like that there can be specializations in the trade publications, so that busy executives can read only those publications that provide information relevant to their market. So this specific journals which are specializing in a particular area, so they publish the information about the fashion trends, themes, upcoming things, and best industry practices of only that part of the industry. So those, the people who are working in that part of the industry, they can focus on that journals only, instead of reading a general journal which has got everything. Many of things are not maybe not directly related to the executive who is reading that. So it would save the executive's time. So that is why there are specialized trade journals focusing on different areas of the industry. So that the executives working in that particular area of the industry can choose what they have to read. These are published as frequently as 5 days in a week or weekly once. So the period of publication can vary. It can be once in a week, it can be once in a fortnight, it can be once in a month. So the periodicity can vary from journal to journal. Similarly, trade publication caters to all categories like women's, kids, men's, textiles, sportswear, visual merchandising, etc. That means there are specific trade publications available for women's, there are specific trade publications available for kids wear, there are specific trade publications available for menswear, and there are specific trade journals meant for textile industry, specific trade journals devoted to sportswear, and similarly there are specific trade journals focusing on the visual merchandising practices. So depending on where the executive is working, he can choose what type of trade publications he has to read. For example, we have Women's Wear Daily, WWD in US. And similarly we have, which is obviously, as the name indicates, Women's Wear Daily focuses on women's wear industry only. So the people who are working in menswear industry need not read or subscribe to Women's Wear Daily. Similarly we have DNR, Daily News Record, and similarly we have Sportswear International. That means Sportswear International would carry information pertaining to the sportswear. So the executives who are working in the sportswear may be interested to subscribe and to read Sportswear International. Similarly, the executives working in kids wear, so may not be interested, need not subscribe to Sportswear International. Similarly, we come to role of international consumer fashion magazines. So these fashion magazines are aimed at consumer in general and show fashion that is already available in the retail stores. So these fashion magazines are talking the fashions that are already introduced in the market, and these fashion magazines are meant for the general public, the consumers at large. So designers find these magazines helpful for forecasting as it helps them to create trends and new designs. But designers find this because sometimes these magazines carry about what are the upcoming trends, and they also carry and publish themes for the upcoming seasons. So there can be some inspirations available for designers from these fashion magazines also. At times these inspirations, these can be very useful and very successful for the designers. So that is why the designers and merchandisers and the people working in the industry would also avidly read the fashion magazines that are meant for general consumers at large. So again, periodicity may vary. Some may be published only 2 times a year, some may be 4 times a year, some may be 6 times a year. So periodicity would vary from magazine to magazine. But magazines are very important resource for designers, particularly when the budget cuts eliminate the design services. Designers buy only the magazines that provide suitable ideas for their specific product. Again, here also a designer or a merchandiser can be specific to what magazines to read and what magazines to subscribe depending on the area of their work, depending on their choice, depending on their taste. So depending on their requirements, there may be certain fashion magazines which may be more useful for a designer working in a particular part of the industry, and it may not be focusing so much in other parts. So again, it all depends on again requirements, tastes, and interests. But definitely, fashion magazines are an important source of inspiration and motivation for designers and the merchandisers. So designers buy only magazines that provide suitable ideas for their specific product. It can be ordered through overseas publishers representatives in New York. For example, we have fashion magazines like Vogue, which is very popular among the fashion or among the general public as well as the people working in the fashion industry. We have Harper's Bazaar collections, and we have collections, and we have Vogue and baby fashion, so on and so forth. So as the name indicates, some of the things you can see that where they are focusing. Then we have catalogs. Designers also use catalogs as resources. So designers also use catalogs as a resource for ideas. So they can get ideas from the catalogs. Catalogs are essentially free magazines. So when you say catalogs, they are like free magazines for the designers and merchandisers. So then other design sources, historic and ethnic costumes. So when you look at the study of historic costumes, study of ethnic costumes, and study of arts. So what are the arts that are coming up historically? What are the arts? What are the contemporary arts? What is projected by the contemporary artists? So all these things can be an inspiration and motivation for designers as well as merchandisers in the design and development of merchandise. Similarly, traveling to the places can also give you ideas. There can also be a sources of inspiration for designers. They can be inspired by many things that they see when they travel. So traveling can be an important source, an important design source, an important source of inspiration and motivation for the designers. Designers often turn to the past, recent or distant past, or to folk costume and the ideas and themes. That means apart from these, designers can always look to the past. The past may be a recent past. They can go 10 years back, 20 years back. They can go hundreds of years back. See what is the costume history. See what our people, our previous generations have worn, and take inspiration again from them and make some new trends. Take inspiration, take motivation from the history, costume history, and make some interesting designs. So that way it is always possible to go back in the history. Costumes fall into two categories, and both are inspirational sources of design. So one is historic costumes, the fashion of a certain historical period. So when you say historic costumes, it is the fashion of a certain historical period. So you can refer to a Mughal era in Indian context, Mughal era costumes. You can refer to Gupta's era costumes. You can also look into the British India's times costumes. So you can see what is, look at a particular period costumes, see if you can draw some inspiration, some motivation to design, bring out some, to come out with certain design ideas. So that is always a possibility. The second possibility is folk art or folk or ethnic costumes, traditional and regional dresses. So we have a lot of ethnic minorities, we have the tribals and various aboriginal groups and their costumes, what they wear. So there can be an inspiration from that. There can be inspiration and motivation. Designers can take inspiration and motivation from them, and they can take a good design concepts. Successful design concepts can come out of out of the study of these things. So historical costumes and ethnic costumes both can contribute greatly in inspiring the designers for the good design concepts to bring out new trends and new fashions into the arena. For folk influence on the fashions and trends on designers and merchandisers, we have a lot of examples, and there are a lot of cases where their influences and inspirations were taken from ethnic costumes of Russia. So many times, many designers were influenced and they were inspired and motivated to come out with the design concepts based by taking inspiration from Russian folk costumes. Similarly, many costumes were designed and developed by taking inspiration from the Mexican folk costumes. And again, similarly, there were many designs were done using the Chinese folk influence. So there are many cases and many instances where the folk costumes have influenced the designers' thinking and designers. So they acted as a designer source of inspiration. And vintage clothing shops and services. Designer shop, vintage clothing stores, flea markets, and thrift shops, auctions, and online for old garments and fabrics to interpret today's fashion. That means designers have a curiosity to know what was happening, what is that the other people are designing, what is that they have sold in other markets. To get an idea of all these things, they have the habit of doing vintage shopping, going to the vintage shop, old cloth stores, vintage shopping store which sell very old and very antique type of clothings. So they go to these vintage clothing stores, they go to flea markets, and they also go to thrift shops, and they may even go to the auctions and online for old garments and fabrics to interpret today's fashion. So this interpretation of old garments, interpretation of old fabrics, interpretation of very old fabric developments would give you a clue to how these things have developed later into the fashions, into your trends. So that would enable the designers and the merchandisers to interpret today how today's things can lead to tomorrow fashions. So that way, vintage clothing shops, vintage shopping is again a very important source for the designers to get inspired. There are also stylists and services that search for inspirational old clothes for manufacturers. Similarly, there are stylists and there are services available uh, for searching the inspirational old clothes. So there are services available for that. So their job is only to look for old clothes which may give some inspiration, which may give some leads to the manufacturers and designers. So these services are again available services, and all these things would contribute to the trend analysis and ultimately to the fashion forecasting. So that way, all these looking at old clothing, old fabrics, so very vintage type of clothing, vintage type of fabrics will be definitely of a great help for the designers and the manufacturers. And next thing we have museums. Museum costume collections offer the unique opportunity of seeing actual preserved garment displayed on the mannequins. So many of the museums across the world, they have this the clothing, the costumes, the historical costumes, the historical costumes displayed in the museum for the visitors. So these historical clothes displayed would definitely be useful for studying the historical nature of the costumes, and by studying that, yes, there can be a inspiration for the current generations, current generation of designers and manufacturers to take inspiration and to create new things by getting inspired by those historical costumes which are on the display in the museums across the world. So, based on the data, based on the gathered data and information, forecasting can be done for any apparel or non-apparel company. So, like that, we have seen that what are the various sources of information, various sources of resources of data. So, by gathering the data and information, compiling them and analyzing them, you can always look at make a predictions. You can always make predictions about the any for any apparel or non-apparel category successfully. What are the fashion forecasting sources in India? Can Indian clothing and textile manufacturers use forecasts made by international agencies? Or does the industry require a forecasting cell of its own? So that means, are there any forecasting services sources available in India or not? And can Indian clothing and textile manufacturers, we have so many clothing and textile manufacturers in India. So what do they use? Can they use the forecasts made by the international agencies? Or are these industries, these Indian clothing manufacturers and textile manufacturers, do they have a forecasting unit of forecasting cell of their own? So what is the scenario? International sources. Influential fashion consumer magazines like Vogue, LA, etc. have their own, they have become an international resource for the trends and other things. Similarly, Hollywood movies have a direct impact on Indian audience as well, because Hollywood is international, their presence is global, everybody watches the Bollywood, Hollywood movies. Anybody who is fluent in English, anybody who can understand English, anybody who can make out from English movie would always love to watch Hollywood movies. So similarly, so hence they have a tremendous impact on the audience. So they keep track of the flashes of colors and themes in the famous ones. As Indian teenagers aspire to be like American counterpart, it is good to keep track of trends coming in youth cultures of US and Europe. Since US and Europe are advanced countries, so what there is a tendency by the youth to follow what is being followed in those countries. So that is a natural influence because of the globalization and there is a tremendous revolution in terms of the communication and internet. So what is happening in the other part of the world is known in any part of the world in no time through internet, through electronic media. So the international resources influence has actually increased. So the access to international sources has increased. So the influence also has increased. So naturally they will have tremendous impact. Check out trade magazines. Check out trade magazines for guidelines and what are the long-term trends. So trade magazines are always trade magazines or trade publications are always a useful resource for the people who are working in the industry. For example, for example, WWD, Women's Wear Daily, etc. So they all can be referred for guidelines and for long-term trends. So that way it is a very useful resources internationally. Also for new technologies. So they also talk about what are the new technologies coming up, be it whether in the manufacture of the women's wear, be it in the marketing of the women's wear, be it in the retailing of the women's wear. So they also have a technological focus on that thing, and how the revivals coming in the way of fashion, how the fashion industry always getting revived even after some setbacks or economic crises. So all that information will be available in these magazines. Similarly, you can also look at the fashion websites. Fashion website, as we talked earlier, they are important resources. So in the fashion websites can be e-giants, e-magazines or e-giants, websites of directional and designer boutiques. So there are sites of the designer boutiques and journals on fashion, etc. So there are e-magazines or e-giants available in the net, and there can also be a design websites of belonging to designer boutiques. Websites belong of the journals working on the fashions. So all these websites may not be directly the websites of a fashion forecasting uh, organizations, but the websites of any of these fashion related, those who are in the fashion business and those who are in the boutique business, those who are in the publishing and trade publications and fashion magazines. So the websites of all these people would be very useful resource. They will be a very useful resource. Then forecasting agencies and cooperatives of fabrics. So there are forecasting agencies directly involved in the making the forecast for the coming seasons. So they do their own research. They have their own research process. They make their own analysis and inferences, and they publish their findings. So there are again forecasting agencies, and there are cooperatives of fabrics. So it involves huge research, huge amount of investments. So many of the fabric the organizations or textile organizations or even apparel organizations, they come together and form a cooperative which would work on the forecasting process, by doing an extensive research. In the long term, the fashion specialties will be share view and direction for long time. Time period would be 5 or more years. So this kind of a long-term orientation, long-term sharing and collaborating on fashion forecasting would be a very useful thing. In the short term, periodic monitoring for long-term vision. So in a short term, for the fashion forecast research, you should look at periodic monitoring of long-term vision, and time period 1 year or less. Short time is a time period of 1 year or even less. Forecasting process. Fashion forecasting varies with methods they use to predict. So the actual methods may vary slightly from organization to organizations, and they may use to predict the mood of the people, the mood of these market segments, and predict the behavior, the buying behavior and consumer behavior, consumer buying behavior, and buying habits of the consumers. Focus on the what are the habits, buying habits of the consumers. Retailers and manufacturers capitalize potential on needs, wants, and aspirations of the consumer. That means that the retailers and manufacturers, they are basically looking at satisfying the needs of the customers, satisfying the wants of the customers by looking at what are the aspirations of the consumer. So what they are aspiring to consume, what they are aspiring to acquire, what they are aspiring to become. So these are very very important when you want to know the customer and his behavior in his buying patterns. When you want to predict his buying patterns, we have to necessarily look at what are the needs, then what are the wants, and finally what are their aspirations. So knowing fully at these three levels, understanding the customer at these three levels would be very very useful in the fashion forecast research process. So the steps in developing the fashion forecasting. First steps in the developing the fashion forecasting. One is identify the basic facts about the past and present trends. So basically try to identify what are the facts, what is the information related to past trends and present trends. What are past trends, what are present trends. And then second step, determine the causes of change in the past. So try to find out how the change has occurred, why the change has occurred, what has driven the change, and how the change has occurred. So this kind of understanding the change would enable to predict the change. So determine the step 2 would be to determine the causes of the change in the past. Then comes step 3, which is determine the difference between the past forecasts and actual behavior. Determine the difference between the past forecasts and actual behavior. That means in the previous forecasts, what is the predicted and what is the actual change. What is the change predicted and what is the actual change. That means to what extent the prediction has become true. To what extent the prediction has become true and to what extent it has failed. So that is again a very very important. Given the change, how it was change was predicted and how the change predicted change was actually happened. So these are all again very very important contributors to fashion forecast research process. Step 4 would be determine the factors. Determine the factors likely to affect trends in future. So look at the factors likely to affect trends in the future. That means you have to look over and look around. You have to keep your antenna up all the time. Find out factors. Find out factors which are most likely to influence the trends in future, which are most likely to affect the trends in future, and how these factors are going to influence the trends. In what direction they are going, they are likely to influence the trends. That is very very important. So in what direction the fashion trends are likely to get influenced by various factors. So what factors are more strong? There can be sometimes factors which retard the fashions. There can be factors which accelerate the fashions. So what are more predominant? Accordingly, we can also say at what rate the changes can happen. Then step 5 would be application of forecasting tools and techniques. So in the step 5, whatever data you have gathered, whatever data you have collected, information you have collected, so you try to forecast, you try to analyze and forecast, and there are definitely many tools and techniques that may be applied in this process. Then sixth step is the most important, is following the forecasting. Whatever is forecasted, whatever is predicted is followed in the design and development of merchandise. Whatever is predicted, whatever is forecasted is followed in the design and development of the merchandise. So when you design and develop merchandise in accordance with the predicted fashions, so the acceptability of that merchandise by the customers is going to be increasing. So there will be a reduced risk of rejection by the customers. There is a reduced risk of customers not accepting the same and customers not buying the same. So if the risk of not accepting the merchandise is reduced greatly, that means the fashion forecasting is successful, designer is successful, merchandise is successful. The entire investment that is done on fashion forecasting is justified. So that is the truly the purpose of fashion forecasting, and it gets fulfilled when what is predicted is followed, implemented, and successfully sold in the market by greatly reducing the rejections, greatly reducing the markdowns. That is the ultimate success of a fashion forecasting. So when you follow the fashion forecasting, when you try to implement that, if you see there are certain changes, certain things are not going as exactly as per predicted acceptance, then you can also in the based on the initial indications, based on the initial feedback from the market, you can make some revisions in the forecast. That is also a, if it is quite early or early in the season or just before the season, there is a possibility to look at revising the forecast also. So what are the areas of work or field of research in the fashion forecasting? So one is we look at lifestyles. What are the lifestyles of the consumers? What are the lifestyles of the people? How these lifestyles are changing over a period of time, and how this change of lifestyles is making a change in the buying pattern of the clothing, and how this change of lifestyles is making them to make changes in their buying preferences for the fashions. Similarly, what are the attitudinal changes? How the attitudes of these consumers is changing? What is their attitude towards fashion and fashion changes? So what do how do they see the fashions, the trends upcoming? And that is again a very, very important study with respect to the fashion forecast study. And another important thing would be the values and value system. So what kind of values they are following? So their values and value systems may enable to accept some fashions easily. Some fashions they may not accept so easily because of their values and the value system. So it makes a very good sense, and it is very much required that you research into the lifestyles of the people and attitude of the people towards clothing, towards fashions, towards the shopping in general, and also about the values and value systems. Similarly, look at what is leisure and sports. So how people are spending their leisure time. Where do they whether people are spending their leisure time to relax, to go on vacation, to make a good family outing, or they want to use their vacation for some social cause, to work for a society, to do some social service. So how do they see that the leisure? So there has been always a change of how the people are viewing their leisure time. There was a time when people used to prefer, especially in Western countries, to use the leisure time for shopping, to go outing, to have to spend in a resort, going and all that thing. But over a period of time, at least a section of the society have changed their opinion as to how to spend their leisure time. Now, actually, they want to do some meaningful work, some social work, some working towards the society's betterment. So that is what how they want to spend the leisure time in a very more meaningful manner. So their attitude towards that is changing. And again, the participation in the sports, how the people are interested in sports, what kind of sport they are playing, and what kind of clothing that requires. So what kind of clothes they need to be active in those sports. So this kind of analysis and what new trends are coming, so that the sportswear can be give better performance to the wearer. So all these things one needs to study and one needs to look at. So what are the trends coming up in that front? Similarly, street fashions. What fashions are coming up on the street? So because what people are generally wearing, especially the people who go for street fashions, what new trends are coming and what new ideas are coming up from there. So that can always be a very good important contribution to the fashion forecast research. Similarly, architecture and design. What new things are coming? What new trends are coming? How the thinking is changing in the architecture. So and in the design. So what new developments are happening in the architecture area and also in the design area, and how design thinking is going to influence the public life at large, how design thinking and design concept, design developments are going to influence the lifestyles, the way the people live, the thinking of the people, and ultimately how it may affect the fashion scenario, how it ultimately it may affect the fashion change scenario. So we need to look at all these implications. Then comes the music. Music is again an important part of people's life. So the next thing is music. Music is again a very very important part of the people's life. So music, what are the developments that are happening with respect to music? What new trends are going to affect come into picture in the music area? How music is influencing the lifestyles of the people, and how music is influencing the thinking, and how music ultimately would likely to be influence the fashions, how any new trends that the musical developments can bring into the fashion change. So this is again a very very interesting area, and the fashion forecasters need to study the developments with respect to the music and how that may ultimately influence the fashions at large. Similarly, look at films. Films again are an important major influencing factor on the people. Films are a major entertainment resource for people, and what is they project in the films, what the celebrities in the films wear, and what new trends that may be projected in the films may be accepted and taken to a fashion stage by the people. So it is very very important that a fashion forecaster is avidly researching into the films and what is their impact on the fashion movements and fashion changes. So and so is the case with the same is the case with the arts. What is the thinking of artists? What they are projecting? What kind of thinking they are projecting? Also, what thinking concepts are coming out of these arts and artists? So that again may have ultimately somewhere it may influence the fashion and fashion changes down the line. So it is very essential that one studies these things. Then we have the catalogs. Again, catalogs are a very very important source for study. So fashion forecasters should never neglect the importance of the catalogs. Then we have media. Media has a tremendous influence on people and people's thinking. So particularly the electronic media, the internet media. So they what is projected there, what is published and for telecast there, what is posted in the media, will always is getting um, into popularity, and people are ultimately getting influenced by that. So what is projected in the media is always of importance. So the fashion forecast researcher should definitely focus on what is happening on the media front. Try to see if these media are projecting any new things and new thinking, and ultimately a new kind of influence on the fashions. So that is again a very very important. And another important, most important thing is the socio-cultural changes. How the society is changing, how the social structures are changing, how this family system is changing, how the system of marriage is changing, how these relations between parents and children and parents and grandparents. So how this society changes are happening, society structure is changing, and how the culture is changing, and how the cultural changes are happening, what are influencing the cultural changes, and how these cultural changes are influencing social changes, and social changes are influencing cultural changes, and book together how, what is the potential that they can influence the fashions, what is the potential that they can influence the fashion movement, fashion changes, what kind of impact they can have on the fashions, is ultimately of great importance to the fashion forecast researcher. Then we have fashion theories. Fashion theories. So, what are fashion theories? So, basically, fashion theory is our theories of how fashions spread in the society. How fashions spread in the society, where they originate, and how do they spread to other parts of the society. So, majorly there are three theories which are in vogue regarding the fashion theories. One is trickle down theory. Trickle down theory. The trickle down theory says that fashions invariably originate in the upper strata, upper socio-economic strata of the society. Fashions invariably originate in the upper socio-economic strata of the society, and then they percolate down towards the lower strata. Slowly they will percolate through middle strata to lower strata of the society. So this is called trickle down theory. Fashions originate in the upper socio-economic strata and they spread slowly to middle strata, then lower strata ultimately. Similarly, we have another theory called trickle across theory. Trickle across theory. According to trickle across theory, fashions originate in a in one section of the society and they spread in the same section of the society without touching the other sections of the society. Fashions originate and spread in the same sector or same section of the society without touching the other. So these may be like may origin. There some fashions may originate in tribal cultures and they may spread in them and without touching the other sections of the society. There can be certain trends originating in the ethnic minorities and spreading among them without touching the other sections of the society. So this is type of a spread is known as a trickle across theory. Trickle across theory. Then we have another theory called trickle up or bottom up theory or bubble up theory. This is a theory which says that some fashions do originate in the lower socio-economic strata and they spread to the upper socio-economic strata through middle strata. So upward trickling up, bottom up theory. So there are classic examples in this. One is jeans, so denim jeans. So they are worn by the industrial workers. These are originally worn by the industrial workers in the late 18th century for their easy wear and care. For their easy wear and care. So, but they have gained popularity and they have spread to all sections of the society. Now, denim jeans now are very popular with all strata of the society. That is how they have spread. Similarly, there is another example which is t-shirts. T-shirts were also originally used by the industrial workers in the lower economic strata, and they have been used by them for their easy wear and easy care. But they have gained popularity and they have spread to all sections of the society, and now t-shirts are popular in all sections of the society. Then the next thing is fashion seasons. Fashion seasons. So what is a fashion season? Fashion season is period of time during which fashion products are sold. Fashion seasons, it is a season is a period of time during which fashion products are sold. So fashion seasons has basically two types of thing. One is traditional seasons and other one is user occasions, based on the user occasions. In the traditional classification we have autumn winter and spring summer. In traditional classification we have autumn winter season, spring summer season. But whereas in the user occasion based classification. We have lifestyle based seasons and attitudinal seasons. Changing fashion seasons. The sub seasons in the seasons could be, in spring we can have early spring, then spring, then we have, in summer also we can have early summer, then summer, and summer scale, high summer, then we can have transitional autumn and back to school. These are the typical seasons in US. Changing fashion seasons, similarly after autumn we have party wear, Christmas presents, winter scale. So similarly we can carry with respect to the calendar months. So we have January, February as one season, February, March is one, April, May, and May, June. June itself can also be a very specific period. June, July, August, and August. So, and similarly, September, October can be one season. November month itself can be a season. December month and December, January, late December and January can be another seasons.